Hello and welcome to Hurt Less, Live More with me, JJ, the practical alchemist, and the renowned psychiatrist, Dr. Mark Goulston. And today our guest for some really fascinating conversation, sometimes maybe raw conversation, is somebody who I'll allow Mark to introduce properly, but it's Ardeshir Mehran. Mark, tell us more about Ardeshir, and welcome, Ardeshir.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're glad to have you, Ardeshir. I met Ardeshir when we were both as part of a community, and he and I have gotten to know each other. I'll tell you a little bit about his background and why he fits so well with Hurt Less, Live More. He's a PhD psychotherapist, behavioral researcher, and leadership coach with a doctorate and master's degrees from Columbia University. He's a business leader, a keynote speaker, and a podcast guest, and now the guest of our show. He's also the author of the new book, You Are Not Depressed, You Are Unfinished. So for 30 years, he's been on a quest to pinpoint what depression and anxiety actually are, why they persist, and why executives and high achievers have such high levels of depression and anxiety. And I was happy to have him on because he is seeing if there is, the silver lining inside depression and anxiety. So rather than running from it, we shouldn't stay stuck in it and ruminate in it and, have an endless loop in our head that doesn't help. But there's a lot of value in leaning into it, feeling it. And that's what this show is about. Hurt Less, Live More came into being because JJ and I believe that the world has a kind of a global phobia about feeling hurt or fear, and instead the majority of people run into destructive coping mechanisms, which distracts them, but it doesn't make the hurt and fear go away. And so, Ardeshir, it's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so glad and proud to be here. I love you guys. I mean, Mark, you and I have met, 2-3 times, and JJ, I've met you. An honor to be here and to be of service to your audience.
Oh, well, we're loving having you here with us, Ardeshir. So tell us about your book. I mean, what a fascinating title, right? It's and as somebody who has suffered from depression in my lifetime, I'd love to hear really what you're saying here.
Yeah, thank you. So I didn't know I'm writing this book. And in some way, I think I've been writing this book all my life. And it came with a quest. And when children look at mom and dad and brothers, sisters, grandparents, and you wonder, and I wonder, what is that look in my mom's eyes that she's there, but she's not there? My dad is not there. And I was asking, Mom, where are you? What are you thinking? And she says, Ardeshir, go to the kitchen, go play out. And nobody wanted to talk about. And I noticed there's an element of sorrow that is part of people's lives, and we come to tolerate that. So it hit me when I become an adult, become a father, and my son started to have behavioral problem, went to psychologist, and he was only 8 years old, and he said, my dad is sad and quiet. And I realized I've become just like my parents. And that was the beginning that some of the work that I've been doing over the years started to come to fruition for me, that what is depression? What is anxiety? So I'm a seriously trained clinician, good student all along. And I start to realize depression and anxiety, we clinicians, we love the symptoms. We go chase the symptoms, sleep better, have more pleasure, eat better, diet, and so on. But all the way when I remember when I was doing my clinical training in Bellevue, and when people talked about their depression and anxiety, if you listened to how they talk about beyond the symptoms, they were telling a story. It was something was lost. They were yearning. They literally said yearning. And in my book that is coming, I have multiple stories, people searching for something. And I would ask them, tell me more, tell me more. They were fragments of the man they were, the girls they were, the woman, and somewhere along the line of life, they lost themselves. And then I started to go work for corporation. As a psychologist, I went to corporate environment, executives, and the depression and anxiety in executives are very hard to see because they have a smile on their face, corner office, gold Rolexes, and they seem to have it all. And people would come to me and said, Ardeshir, can I speak with you? And I learned from early on, I had two types of meetings that they were on the book about project, strategy, and so on. And they were meetings that says, Ardeshir, can you just, let's go for a walk. Can I meet with you? Close the door behind you. And they were sharing private stories about themselves, of the person that was lost. They were about to become a CEO and they were miserable and they didn't know what to do. They reminded me of my dad and mom, story of finding themselves. The part that hurt me, then I learned that it's my own story, that I had part of me was lost along the way. So depression, if you listen to, depression is a story of finding yourself. Rumi, Persian Sufi of 1,000 years ago, and says that the answer to pain is through the pain.
Yeah.
If you sit with depression and not go quickly to fix it, take medication, drug, porn, you name it, and so on, depression will guide you home if you listen to it. And there are yearnings we have. So when I went for my doctoral program, my professors told me, Ardeshir, you're very good with information, with data. Somehow your mind processes information very well. Tell us stories. So I started back when I was in 20, as people told me their stories, I started to model that, try and draw pictures, bubbles here, chevron over there, rims and reels of paper. So as I was trying to figure out my depression, I realized those stories, actually, they fall into some neatly structured buckets. One of the work that I bring to the world is called the Bill of Emotional Rights. What it is, we humans, from the dawn of man, from the time we have written documents, we've been seeking certain emotional experiences from birth to death. We all have them. And these are as elemental as our DNA and our civil rights. And those needs, when they were talking about depression and anxieties and so on, it was those needs, one or several of them, they were violated, fragmented, discarded, and not attended to in their lives. It was a journey of coming home to themselves, of the person they were, and somehow they were forced to be different ways versus be in their own path. So the journey of healing is journey of coming home to the person you knew you are, but life forced you off track. And what I've seen in my work, and before without announcing it to anybody, I started to change my practice of therapy and coaching. And what I noticed, people's depression and anxiety actually shifts. And people have seen this, that I tell people, there will be a day you wake up, you're not depressed, you're pissed. You don't want to waste time anymore. Say, oh my gosh, it's my story. I wasted so much time in fog. When I married, oh, wow. I tell my wife, I love you. And I didn't know what love means. I was dense inside. No more. I'm not going to do that anymore.
Oh, you just really touched me with that. And I'll tell you why, because it was only yesterday that it was Mother's Day yesterday here in the UK. And
Mother's Day.
My mother passed away 3 years ago in a couple of days. So Mother's Day, nearly the anniversary of my mother's passing. And I found myself really feeling a bit depressed yesterday.
Yeah.
And what I realized I was depressed about and angry about was having wasted so much of my time on this depression, or was it me, or was it imposed upon me? But in any case, it didn't really matter what I was I was grieving for
Yeah.
was this just wasted time.
Yeah.
Where I wasn't, and you know what you say, wasn't finding myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Depression is grieving.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just came to me yesterday. So when you were talking just now, I suddenly thought, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, that's just summed everything up that I was feeling. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you. I'm going to cry again now, Mark. You better take over here.
No, that's fine. In fact, there are sessions that I do once a month to talk and sharing my work with the world. And I tell people I'm an open source. My purpose in life is help people not suffer anymore. Yeah. And then so there are sessions I start to cry, and I tell people I'm not sad, so you don't have to feel sorry for me. What I'm doing, I'm integrating. These are the cries that they needed to happen when I was growing up for a number of reasons. I couldn't feel them. I numbed myself. So as I'm feeling them, I let go. I'm finding myself. So crying, it's good. We are integrating. We're becoming whole again.
Thank you. I did a bit of that yesterday as well. Yeah. And of course, people are probably going to be listening to this way past Mother's Day, but it's just as valid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
This is wonderful, the conversation we're having. I did something recently. There's someone I'm helping who's a 30-something male from a very high achieving family. And we did a Zoom session. Everything I do is on Zoom. And I said, I'd like to record a session, and you're going to send this to your parents. I've never met your parents, but you're going to send this as a way of introducing me to them. And what I want you to talk about is once upon a time you had trust. You trusted yourself, you had confidence in yourself, and you had courage, and it's gone. It got beaten out of you because everybody, whenever you came up with something that was not crazy but creative, your lawyer parents would say, well, what are you going to do with that? Well, blah, 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 blah. And what happened is, out of respect, you just let go of it and you let go of yourself. And so I just like let's record a Zoom call. You'll introduce me to your parents, and you're going to talk about the last time you remember that you had trust, confidence in yourself, and courage, because where you are now is you don't have trust or confidence in yourself, and you don't have the courage to fight. So you just kind of exist. And he just started crying. Mm-hmm. So so it was a recording that his parents are going to see. Mm-hmm. Because something that I've observed in my work with trying to connect parents, especially to teenagers, is when teenagers complain, blame, make excuses, threats, or they're moody, they trigger their parents to not listen. So complaining, blaming, making excuses, threats, or being moody triggers parents to react. So one of the reasons teens do not open up to parents is because they don't think their parents can really listen. But I think if you're listening to this and you're a parent, realize that underneath those things that trigger you is a lot of pain that they can't open up to you. And the reason they can't open up to you is because they don't think you'll understand, and they don't realize that they're triggering you to not understand. So I just wanted to share that because I'm going to be speaking to the parents. I'm really excited about that because I know down deep they love this child.
That's right. Thank you, Mark. I wrote it down once upon a time. I want to reflect on it. What I learned, and I want to close a knot here, that as I grew up, I had two life force. One was be daring, and one to be protected. I felt there was juncture in my life, and I remember them vividly. I was a child that needed to be harnessed. I was curious, precocious, asking a lot of questions, going places I wasn't supposed to do. I was very creative, and I was very soon, don't do that. and then all the name calling, shaming, blaming, physical punishment, I lost me. I became timid. I became anxious and became fitting to be loved. But deep down, I was holding on to the image that there's a different Ardeshir inside me. So it was through my pain I found me. So as I wrote my book, I didn't realize that it became my book a love letter to my parents. And I write about this. Now, now I'm getting emotional.
That's okay.
My hurt reminded me of their hurt and my grandparents' hurt. We were all hurt.
Yes.
Parents, through shame and blame, they protect your children to be safe. And the boundary of safety, that's all they knew, because my being precocious and being, as kids are, triggered things in my mom. She had a very hard life and she saw things, she was traumatized. She was trying to create a boundary of safety for me, but that was too much for me. So no. So my book, when I says, Mom, I'm doing okay. You rest in peace. Dad, I'm doing okay. You rest in peace. It's your life gift that made me here.
That is just beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And let's just sit with that for a moment. Right now, we've got to take a short break, but we'll be back with so much more after this from our station sponsors.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And you're listening to Hurt Less, Live More on UK Health Radio with me, JJ, the practical alchemist, Dr. Mark Goulston and Ardeshir Mehran. And Mark, something that Ardeshir said before the break really reminded you of another story. What was that?
Well, you don't want to sit on a plane next to me. So I was noted. I'm going to make, yeah. So I was on this plane, and I think I was in first class because I was going to give a talk, and I don't usually sit in first class. And there's some interesting people that you sometimes meet, and I won't mention the person's name, but he was the former head of a huge studio in Hollywood. And we're getting to know each other, and you don't want to sit next to me on a plane, especially after I've had a drink or two. So this is out of context, and I said, he was talking about, positive this and positive that, but again, I listened for hurt, and I said, there's something that's eating at you. What's eating at you? And he said, what? I said, I don't know. There's something that's eating at you, something that you're still upset about. And he said, well, if you want to know, I haven't thought about it, but I'm still upset with my parents. I'm upset with my dad because we were poor, and I was angry at him. And I said, well, was he an alcoholic? Was he abusive? No, he was just. We were just poor. And we were flying to Washington, and he was going, to do some event. I said, where is your dad? He said, well, he's dead. I said, well, where's he? Is he buried somewhere? And he said, yeah, near Baltimore. I said, have you ever visited his grave? He said, no. I said, well, let me ask you, have you known fear in your life that was sometimes close to paralyzing? He said, yeah. I said, do you think it's possible that your dad knew fear? Because you said in spite of that, he wasn't an alcoholic, he wasn't abusive. He just, he just couldn't stand up to the fear. And is it possible that you were judging him and you judged him and you're holding on to a grudge? And he got quiet. He said, maybe. I said, I have an assignment for you. I want you to go to the cemetery. It's not that far from Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go there, I want you to apologize to him. I want you to tell him that you were wrong and that he did the best he could.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it may have been a disappointment to you, but he didn't beat anyone. He didn't do anything. He just couldn't perform. And I want you to apologize to him, and I want you to ask his forgiveness.
Yeah.
And then and he had a strange spelling last name. So afterwards, after the trip, I realized, boy, I don't know if this guy was asking for, a shrink to ruin his plane ride. So I email him and I say, geez, I hope it wasn't too personal. And I didn't get a response. So I thought, well, I just, obviously I offended him. I upset him. But then I realized I was misspelling his name. So I got the right spelling of his name and I sent him an email. And I said, well, I hope that wasn't too personal. And he writes me back. He said, we need to meet. He said, I did what you told me to do. It has changed everything.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
And we met. In fact, and then, we started occasionally having breakfast. And so I haven't reached out to him for several months. So because of this conversation, I'm going to reach out to him and see if we can get together again. But
that's beautiful.
It is wonderful. Yeah. Who knew? Right. Well, maybe it is a good idea to sit next to you on a plane journey.
I'm looking forward to that. Marky and I need to travel.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah. But can we talk about the power of forgiveness, forgiving ourselves, forgiving our parents? Any thoughts from either of you about the power of that? Because I've certainly experienced it and have talked about it in previous shows, and I don't want to necessarily go over that again.
Yeah. If I may, I was in graduate school and I took a course in geriatric psychology. And I remember my professor, Dr. Kramer, and she told the comments is that she just talked about the case study she had working with a grandmother who we just met at Columbia Counseling Center, and said this grandmother came to talk and she was crying about her childhood memories and of parents who long passed away. And so she told us that, dear students, do your stuff while you're still alive, while your parents are still alive. Don't carry through life. So I was in my 20s, late 20s, and I was looking at that. What is she talking about? My family is great. We have no trouble, no problems. It was later on, things came up, the whole notion that parents are there, experiences are there, and emotions, and it's never late to bring it up.
Yeah.
So as I'm doing my work, I realized that I wish I knew in those years with mom and dad what I know now. But in some deep way, I feel it's not late because we have a son, the 20-year-old son, that my wife and I, we made a vow that our generational struggle will stop with us. That we have a different relationship. And in my heart, as Mark talked about, I keep saying that, Mom and Dad, I see you. I know what you were struggling. I know the difficulty from your perspective, and I hope you're happy with me. And my sense is that they are at peace right now as they hear that, like in the energy of the universe, that they are at peace.
Yes, it's healing, going back through the generations, isn't it? Heal yourself, heal the here and now, and it heals both sides. Well, time is probably not linear as we think of it, but it does. So it can heal everything.
That's right.
Past, future, present, or even heal the president. Who knows?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it is. It's very powerful, isn't it? And we've talked before on this show about Ho'oponopono, where you ask for forgiveness, and thank whoever you're making the focus of the prayer, which it kind of is, and you say that you love them. So, and it's a very, very powerful thing. And one of the things, again, going back to my experience when I had this realization about feeling down and low. And I was always also, thinking that I've just got to get over there are still some hurts lingering there.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've just got to get over them. I'm done with them now. Done with it all. Got to forgive it and move on. But it's so easy to say sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
But if we do go through that process of really sitting down and saying, okay, I forgive, and feeling that in the body. So it's not just a question of saying it.
Yeah.
It's really feeling it, not even just believing, but also feeling it in the body, because that's where a lot of that pain is lodged.
Yeah.
Then we can let go of it. And, note to self, that's something I've got to do.
That's right.
Something that has helped me forgive myself that I didn't know I needed forgiving about is, I mentioned in prior shows that I dropped out of medical school a couple times for untreated depression, and I was able to somehow finish. And I realized that there were people who I've lost touch with who listened to me when I dropped out. And I realized I had failed to thank them sufficiently since then. So I've been reaching out to them, and actually one of them is a doctor. I won't go into details about this, but one of them is a doctor. And I said, I just wanted to reach out to you because you were so helpful. You were kind during a rough period. And he immediately calls me back and he said, I got your message, and I thought, do you have a health issue? Because sometimes people reach out and I did mention that I have a health issue. I'm going to hopefully be around for a long time, and but I realized that one of the things that I didn't even know I wasn't forgiving myself is my failing to express my gratitude and appreciation to the people who were there for me tough times, because we can sometimes get so caught up on trying to overcome our resentments, our hurts from the people who weren't there. I think one of the worst things you can do, I'll speak for myself, is to fail to appreciate the people who were.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Completely
Beautiful.
agree. Yeah.
Beautiful. Mark, there's what you just mentioned, people in your life. What I'm noticing, so I left the corporate environment less than a year and a half ago because I feel this work, I need to bring it to the world. And I'm noticing the people who my tribe is changing in a way that I didn't quite expect. But it's fascinating that there are people that they knew Ardeshir, that I was doing the work about healing psychology, bringing to the work. They want to be part of it. They advised me. They were early supporters. And there are people who says, love you, man. That's not my work anymore. That's not topic of interest anymore. So initially I was getting all ticked off. I said, oh, come on, we are buddies, Then I realized it's okay. When you change path, when you change course, you draw different energy, different people.
Yes.
And that's the rhythm of life. And that's okay. That's okay. So at this point, I'm totally open. Whoever wants to hear my message, they want to help me learn, they want to benefit from my work, please welcome. My calendar is open, but people around me are shifting in a very fascinating way.
I've noticed that as well, Ardeshir. It's really interesting how we are attracting different people as we go forward. And And I sometimes describe it as a gathering of the troops, people are
Yes.
coming together, and we will be a force to be reckoned with at some stage. Who knows when, though, because who knows what's going to be happening in the world. But yeah, no, I do find the same. And, my interests change as well. And I'm not so interested in some things that I was interested in before. And, I'm moving into different worlds almost all the time, or moving through different worlds all the time. And that's fine. That's great. That's absolutely okay. And I think it is important, for everybody to realize that, doing something different is really a good thing. And sometimes you might feel a bit lonely, but you're really not alone.
Yeah.
Really
nice
not alone.
Nice. That's
So,
beautiful.
I'm glad you brought that up.
JJ, may I loop back? You mentioned in the narrative before this that as you were changing and we feel our experiences in the body. This is so as part of my change, I delve into the whole somatic work, Dr. Peter Levine, Gabor Mate, and I went deep work around that. So it's always been mystified that people, many times, they know what is right for them. They want something, they yearn for that, but they go to the edge work, but they don't quite finish it. So on Friday, I was talking to a colleague of mine from my previous company, remarkable executive, that she's sitting on hurt, resentment, and an aspiration for different life. And she was saying, and I was inviting her to do some deep work, as Mark was saying, where's the hurt? Where's the sorrow? And she was saying that, Ardeshir, I'm afraid to do that. What if I break down? What if I cry? And then what if those open-ended?
Yeah.
So this was a friendly conversation. So I didn't go into the depth, but what happens when we get to those moments that we get to the edge, our nervous system loves predictability. Even though that predictability kills us. Like my wife lived and died, did an abusive relationship and died of breast cancer. But she was in a predictable relationship and she tolerated that. She was afraid, if I leave that relationship, will I be loved? Will somebody will abuse me, but still give me some nugget of joy and appreciation? And she was staying with that. So I have a follow-up conversation with my colleague, and I will share with her that she can actually go beyond. And what it requires is not just forcing it. You need safety and you need a loving presence of somebody.
That's very
that
true.
you have a witness. Somebody sees you as you are.
Yeah.
For you to create more safety, just go further and find you and let go of the hurt and sorrow you have.
I love that. I completely am with you on that. Totally agree. We have to, though, take a short break again right now. Love to hear more thoughts after this break when we hear some more from our station sponsors.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And we're back with me, JJ, the practical alchemist, Dr. Mark Goulston, and our guest, Ardeshir Mehran. And Mark, did you have any thoughts after what Ardeshir was saying before the break there?
Yeah, I think what's happening, Ardeshir, is you're shifting from ambition to aspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And ambition can be a very jealous mistress. Maybe that's a little bit gender bashing, but ambition, grabs us because it's exciting for the moment, but it's very fleeting.
Yeah.
And ambition drives us to be very pushy. But
Mm-hmm.
when you shift over to aspiration, it can be a little bit lonely in the shift. But when you start to land in becoming the person you were meant to be, you start to attract people.
Yeah.
So instead of having to persuade people, which is something we often have to do when we're being ambitious, if we can let go of that and find out what matters most to us, what we stand for, what we want to stand for. And it can be scary because some people who know they're burned out on the ambition, they say, but what if I don't stand for anything?
Yeah.
What if I come up with nothing?
Yeah.
I won't be able to go back to the other one because I was burned out, but what if nothing happens? And so people can be scared that if I make that transition, that, I'll come up with nothing. And we're here to tell you that that's not likely to happen.
Yeah.
That's just the fear you have because all the trauma, all the ambition caused you to push away who you are, who you really are, and who you're meant to be. And I think to build on Ardeshir's work, depression might be a voice of who you really are screaming out to you to come back and find you.
That's right. That's right. To complete your journey. You have a journey that is uniquely yours. 7.5 billion people, 7.5 billion stories. Complete your journey and you will be.
And part of the journey is to go back to who you are. I know I've interviewed some people on my podcast who I really like, but they're really pedal to the metal, and it feels more like they're running away from something than they're running to something. And sometimes when I listen to them, it just becomes so powerful. I say, I need to stop you. I say, who are you running away from inside? And they go, what? And I say, there's a part of you, and you tell me the age, that is screaming out to me to get your attention.
Yeah.
They want you to come back and find them and just sit with them. They're not angry at you. They're just yelling at me to tell him or her, come back and find me.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll pause and they'll say 7, 6, whatever the age was. Well, tell me about 7 or 6. And then they start to talk about that part of them they left behind.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thinking about your audience, would it be helpful if I just share that people could be listening to this program anywhere in their daily life? That where do I start? Would it be helpful just?
Oh, definitely. Yes, it would be.
So
thank you.
So what we know from the modern research that I was trained initially as a psychoanalyst, that your early life, crevices of your mind, consciousness, the way we are designed, every moment, your entire life is present here. Really, there's no need to go do a lot of backward looking experiences. It's just all the memories, childhood, as Mark talked about, is right here. Start from here. The things that, as you listen to this program, wherever you are, in your office, in your home, in your kitchen, in your yard, take a deep breath and see what comes up for you in your body. So I'm not asking how you're feeling. How you're feeling brings in our head, we're trying to give a label to our emotions. We know from research, we have a lot more emotions, are almost 80-20, than we have words for it. See what comes up for you. Where do you feel any sensations? Joy, tightness, pain, opening. And then ask yourself, what's behind it? What's coming up? There's a statement behind me, you don't see it, and it says that your body is a mirror of how you're functioning in your life. Your body reflects how you're feeling right now. Your body is your safe deposit box. Everything is right in it. Pay attention to the sensations in your body and just ask a simple question. What would I like to do? It's an invitation. What would I like to do to bring more ease, more flow, more love, and more joy right now? You already have that within you. Just do that. The tinier, the better it is. Whatever brings you more flow, more joy, more life, just do that.
And allow yourself to do it, because so often the mind comes in and says, yeah, but that's right. Going to be that. Nobody's going to accept you doing that, or that's going to be ridiculous. Or, so we have to allow ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's right.
One of my friends is an executive coach, Marshall Goldsmith. He's pretty well known around the world, and he's a philosophical Buddhist. And he just has this way of articulating things that just stop you in your tracks. And one of the things that he says, and it's in his new recent wonderful book, The Earned Life, he said, and I want you to just take this in and see where it lands for each of you. He said, every breath you take is a new life.
Yes. Beautiful.
I mean, just think of that. Every breath you take is a new life, and who you were two breaths ago is no longer here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah,
it was just that. And something else I'll share, which I heard recently, and I mean, he said when he coaches people, and this is something I may use in describing. He says, I'm here to help you have a little better life.
Yeah.
And it's just so simple. I'm here to help you have a little better life. Nothing grandiose, and I'm going to help your yada, yada, yada. And, but I'm just sharing it because it feels aligned with what you've been talking about, Ardeshir, about, making things just simple and graspable and feelable.
Yeah.
And,
feelable just is right here. And thank you. The feelable, and JJ said, brain is the last organ in our development to be developed, and its function is almost like a high school principal. Creates a structure organized for us to make sense, and we are fuller when we use our entire being in harmony, mind, body, and spirit, which again, that came to being during the Descartes.
Yeah.
That triple distinction didn't exist before that. We start to put the mind here for mind, body, all of that. Just bring in your breath in presence, everything together, and we become whole again.
And that is behind meditation. And a lot of people think that meditation's a complicated thing, and they think they have to sit in a certain way or be a certain way. No, it's just sitting, breathing, clearing your mind, or not clearing your mind, but when things come into your head, just let them go.
So actually, if I may build on it, so people ask me, Ardeshir, do you meditate? I tell them no. I have too much energy. So I go walk. I'm a runner, but right outside my office, there's a small garden. There are flowers. I see different birds, and I pick up a leaf, literally a leaf on the ground. I just notice it. Notice the color. That is my meditation. Just being in a state of peace and noticing the world around me. Lasts only sometimes in seconds or a minute or two. That's all I need to be here.
And that is perfect, I think. Ardeshir, it's been absolutely wonderful to have you on the show. We're coming towards the end, and I'd just like to remind people of your new book, which is out now. Do tell us the name again and just remind us of what it's all about.
Yeah, thank you. The name is that you are not depressed, you are unfinished. that the journey of healing is journey of you coming home, finding yourself, your bill of rights, your emotional rights, which I will talk about in the book, the science behind it, multiple case studies. Some of them are well-known individuals I interviewed. And there are practices in the book where you are, how to bring more light and ease into your present life. And there are somatic experiences in that. What I dare to say, I've had a number of beta readers, people who didn't know me, read the book, and they told me they couldn't put it down. For
Good.
a book of healing, I said, "Are you sure you're reading my book?" But they said the stories were human stories. It wasn't. It's deeply psychological, but it was people's stories, people's heart, people's emotions. It will be out via Amazon in May, and it's my give back to life. And hope you read it and put it to good use for yourself.
Well, I shall definitely look forward to reading it. And just before we leave, Mark, a final word from you.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, do get the book, because I think by looking at depression as part of an unfinished journey, as opposed to something that you're stuck in and you can't get out of, I think just by being able to look at it and that it's trying to tell you something, and sometimes you can't listen to it if all you can think about is, how do I get through the pain? How do I get through the pain? And I think this is a wonderful book. And if you're listening in, I hope you'll do that and follow more of Ardeshir's work.
Absolutely, Ardeshir. It's been so wonderful to have you on. I'm really pleased that we did. And, hopefully people will buy your book. I certainly will do. And will be reading it with great interest, because I think that it's a take on depression that needs to get out there. And so I thank you very much for doing that, for writing that. And so we've come to the end of another show. So all of you listening out there, thank you for joining us, and do join us another time. But for now, it's goodbye from Mark and me and Ardeshir Mehran.
Yeah.
Until the next
Thank
time.
you. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.